How's it going, folks? Recording another best ball draft here. So my first recorded Best Ball Mania 4. It's actually my fifth entry. And we got pick 109 here. So kind of a lot to talk about lately. 109, I'm guessing we'll be looking at something like Stefan Diggs, Bijan, or Eckler. Uh, AJ Brown I like a little bit more than Diggs, but it's like I just get so much AJ Brown without having to take him at the 1-9. And if I could choose between AJ Brown or Austin Eckler, who to be more overweight on, I would choose Austin Eckler. So, few things. I'm going to title this video The Geno Smith Paradox. And, a lot of people, when you talk about your best ball portfolio, tend to want to tell people what percentage of players and they should or shouldn't have in their portfolio. And I think it's a bit of a mistake. So, first of all, you only get 150 entries into this contest at most, right? And there's 670,000 total entries. So you are 145th of 1% of the entries in this tournament. So, anyone that's trying to fight variance by kind of diversifying their portfolio, you're not really accomplishing much. Because you're so small a portion of the tournament to begin with. So you're really not accomplishing that much when you're trying to diversify. Within your portfolio, you are accomplishing something, but in the grand scheme of the tournament, you aren't accomplishing a whole lot. So the reason I bring this up is because I'm a known Mac Jones hater, right? And when I say that I'm not going to draft Mac Jones, people will often say things like, oh, well, what if he's the guy you need week 17? Why would you have this stance against one player as opposed to other players? Didn't you just see what Geno Smith did last year? Between Eckler and AJ Brown, I don't know. It doesn't really make much of a difference. So I'm just going to take Eckler this time. I have him ranked higher than AJ Brown, and I've been getting more AJ Brown than Eckler, so I just have a ton of AJ Brown. But I actually have a ton of Eckler as well. But I think Eckler's just a bit undervalued. I don't see any difference really between Eckler and Bijan and CMC. So going back to what I was just talking about with Mac Jones. Last year I was one of the people that actually had Geno Smith in my player pool for Best Ball Mania 3. Now granted, I only got to 2 shares. I had 60 entries. 2 of my entries, I'm going to start double running back here, which is very dangerous on Underdog, but it's half PPR site, and I actually haven't done this yet on Underdog, so I want to try it out and see what happens. I really like the ceiling of Jonathan Taylor with Anthony Richardson there. We might even get Anthony Richardson on this team, which might seem like a non-bow, but I think if Jonathan Taylor is hitting his ceiling for the season and doing really well, that means Anthony Richardson is also playing well enough to be opening things up for him. So I'm not saying I will end up with Anthony Richardson because he's quite expensive on Underdog compared to DraftKings, but I'm just saying it's a possibility. So we also want to look at our Week 17 matchups. You want to correlate your players with Week 17. So for Indy, that's the Raiders, and for the Chargers, it's Denver. I pulled the schedule up on another tab just in case I need to look at it, but I have most of them memorized by now. So getting back to the topic. So Geno Smith, I had 2 shares in my 60. So I'm not going to say I was some super genius that knew he was going to be good and pounded the table for him or anything. But one of the reasons why I actually had him in my player pool and had 2 shares while having no Mac Jones last year was because of his weapons pricing, right? DK Metcalf was priced pretty high. He was going round anywhere between round 3 and 5, depending on what point in the summer you were drafting, and then Tyler Lockett was going in, round 12, and then they had Fant, who was, usually going 16, 17, ended up being a terrible pick. And the running backs and whatever. So anyway, there was a reason to think like, oh, these weapons are actually like priced reasonably, and these are good weapons. Like this quarterback probably shouldn't be going undrafted. This could end up being kind of interesting if we have the next by far best pick come to us be a running back. That would be mildly annoying. It is the dangers of doing underdog drafts and starting running back. This is my first running back start of Best Ball Mania 4. And I kind of like these specific 2 running backs. So we'll see how it goes. So looking back at last year with Geno Smith, you had the 2 weapons that people liked, and they were priced pretty high. So like, instead of just being like, oh my God, last year Geno Smith was a really big hit in round 18, so any quarterback can be a hit in round 18, so let's just make sure we have some of everyone. Like, you have such a small portion of this player pool. Like I said, you're 1/45th of 1%. You don't need to have access to every single player in your player pool. So why don't you instead look for players that have a similar structure to where they are as Geno Smith did. So like a couple of those players are, Sam Howell, who also has rushing upside, which is amazing. So we should move him to the top of the Geno Smith paradox list for me. Because, Terry McLaurin is expensive. Dotson is like medium expensive. You've got Gibson that can catch passes. You've got Curtis Samuel late. You have Logan Thomas, who mostly goes undrafted, that you can add as a tight end in the very last round that correlates. Calvin Ridley went up to 3-1. That's kind of insane. So here we're looking at Ramondre Lamar Andrews. Christian Watson is my favorite wide receiver in this range, so I'm going to go ahead and take him. I also like that he correlates with Minnesota, because one of the people that I'm targeting to try to get a lot of in this window is Alex Madison. Cool. So we're going to take Jerry Jeudy here, because Jeudy and Eckler are a Week 17 matchup. So yeah, Sam Howell, to me, can be like the kind of like Geno Smith type of guy for this year. Terry McLaurin's expensive. Dotson is like medium expensive. They still have Gibson, who can catch passes. They have an undrafted guy in Logan Thomas, which you can pair with him, who I don't think is great, but it's a thing you can do. And there's Curtis Samuel. So I think there's a lot of options. And like the pass catchers kind of tell you that like Sam Howell should be priced higher than he is. He's priced lower kind of for the same reason Geno Smith was not even being drafted, because people are afraid that he might not be the starter. But it seems to me like he's favored to be the starter. So another guy, similarly, that goes like super late in quarterbacks, and I don't like him very much, but there's reasons to believe, is Desmond Ridder. So Ridder also has the rushing upside, right? He's got Kyle Pitts, who's an expensive weapon, Drake London, who's an expensive weapon. He's got Bijan Robinson, who's an expensive weapon. So those guys all being as expensive as they are means that Ridder should likely be a bit more expensive than he is. And so he's another one I like down there. There's also Baker. So obviously I don't like Baker very much. But like people will literally like tout Mac Jones for you while laughing at you if you draft Baker. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm trying really not to have either of these guys because they don't have the rushing upside that Howell and Ritter do. But like Mayfield at least has expensive weapons, right? Like so for Baker to be good, the only thing we need to be wrong about is actually Baker. Because we have Mike Evans, we have Chris Godwin, they have Russell Gage in the slot, who's like a serviceable player. They have Kate Otten. They've got Rashad White, who catches passes. So, like, all that needs to happen for Baker to be good, and he's now working with the same person that worked with Geno last year, is like, you just have to be wrong about Baker. Whereas with Mac Jones, like, none of the weapons are really priced expensively, except for Ramondre, who's like a loose correlation there. I would say much looser than Bijan for Ritter. None of the wide receivers are priced up, right? Like Juju. So like what do you need to be wrong about to lose out on Mac Jones? You literally have to be wrong about like the whole offense kind of like leveling up, which is certainly possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying you have limited bets in this type of tournament. So like, is that a place you want to use a bet? And I don't think it is. I don't think Mac Jones is a place to put one of your like very important bets that we don't have that many of. So because I haven't taken an early quarterback, probably going to target trying to get one of Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson at some point. Richardson loosely correlates with Jonathan Taylor for us. It's like an offensive bet, obviously. Like it's not like Richardson's going to be throwing a ton of passes to Jonathan Taylor, but still, if the offense is good, then both of those players will capitalize from it. Notice Drake London's starting to get a lot cheaper. That's kind of crazy. So this could be a team where we start off with like, this could be a 3 QB team if we miss Daniel Jones. If Kenneth Walker makes it to us, we consider going hyper fragile with like a 4 running back build. I would not do that if any of these other guys get to us. I am going to take Ken Walker here. Kind of rough that you share the bye week with Eckler, but oh well. If we do go with only 4, we'll just make sure that our 4th guy doesn't have bye week 5. So on the way back, I'm going to be looking at Pitts or wide receiver. I have seen Pitts fall like a crazy amount in some of these drafts. Okay, so Pitts goes before us. So we're kind of on Jackson Smith and Jigba or Godwin. I'm going to take Godwin here. So this is definitely a wide receiver heavy room. We're either going to take 4 or absolute maximum 5 running backs. Just kind of depends who's available at different spots. Sean. I might reach on Daniel Jones if I have to with my next pick. I kind of would like to get, or at least the pick after. We'll see if Anthony Richardson's there. Kind of want one of Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. We could get super greedy if Waller's there and try and get Waller and then see if we can get Daniel Jones on the way back. We're going to get a lot of pulls at wide receiver in this draft because we're not going to draft that many running backs. Like I said, we're going to go with a maximum of 5, very possibly 4 running backs. We definitely don't need Darren Waller to be going with Daniel Jones. I'm fine stacking him with like later pieces. Wandell is like extremely cheap, and like I like Wandell more in this type of build where you're going to have like we're probably going to draft at least 9 wide receivers. I'm guessing we'll draft 9 wide receivers. We'll be drafting a minimum of 8. So in this type of build, Wandell is like a nicer bet because you could, afford to not have him for the first couple of weeks of the season if he's slow recovering from his injury. Tempted to go with a 3 wide receiver build, or a 3 quarterback build, because I was just talking about the Geno Smith thing, but we'll see what the draft board gives us. It might just not make sense. Usually if I take Richardson or Daniel Jones, I just draft 2 quarterbacks. So yeah, those are the reasons why I kind of like Mac Jones the least out of all those quarterbacks at the bottom of the draft. So another thing I wanted to talk about was the San Francisco guys. So they're just like tough because you don't have any idea who's going to be starting any weeks, right? So like I'm going to gamble on the San Francisco guys. I'm going to gamble on Trey Lance, and I realize like he's a lower percentage play because he's less likely even to be starting in week 17. But like I kind of want to look at it in the way of like, if my guy is playing in week 17, then which one do I want? So we could take Watson and stack him up later. He has good stack pieces available later as well. There's still 3 wide receivers on the board I can have my eye on, so I'm probably going to go with one of those. So one of the things I do try to do is have 5 wide receivers by round 10. So we're 7 picks in, we have 4 wide receivers, so I'd like to get at least one more by round 10. But it doesn't have to exactly be round 10, you know what I mean? It's like round 11 or whatever. Still fine. So I think this round coming up, I'm going to be looking at like Watson or Daniel Jones. Also could go with Quentin Johnston because he's like basically the last wide receiver of tier for me. Bateman is like kind of close on that tier. Alex Madison is worth a thought. So we have nobody that correlates with Watson, and we have nobody that correlates with Daniel Jones. Joku probably won't make it back to us. Elijah Moore may or may not. All right. I'm going to end up with just like a lot of Daniel Jones, so I'll take Watson on this one. If I had like a Rams player, I could take Daniel Jones. Like, say if I had Cooper Kupp, I definitely would have taken Daniel Jones. Cleveland plays the Jets week 17. So, like, maybe I'll look to get Conklin later on or something to have a Jets bring back. Or this probably won't be a team that I'm drafting a Binaconda on. So we kind of be hoping one of Elijah Moore or Joku gets back to us, but I don't really think that that's super likely. It's certainly possible. For quarterback 2, we have a whole bunch of options. We could really, really push it and go for Sam Howell because we have Dotson. We wouldn't want to do Baker because he has the same bye week as Watson, and Baker's such a weak loose play anyway that I'm not taking a 0 to roster Baker Mayfield. But Jordan Love is an option. Russ Wilson's an option. Sam Howell's an option. Now that Daniel Jones goes off the board, we're definitely not taking a quarterback in the next couple picks. So Cortland Sutton's interesting if we miss out on Elijah Moore and Njoku to try to set up a Russ stack. I really dislike Russ, but it would create a game stack with Eckler for us, which would be nice. But Cortland Sutton goes. We could still do the same thing, but do it with Marvin Mims, who I actually prefer, or Greg Dulcich. So I might still look at doing a Russ stack as my secondary stack to Watson. Watson's going to be tough to get much of a bring back on. Like I said, don't really like Lazard, and I do like Conklin, so that's one I would like to end up with. Nicole Hardman is he's a draftable player, but certainly does not excite me. I'm guessing one of these two people without a tight end takes Njoku. Well, we're going to get a Cleveland piece to go with Sean Watson, so that's awesome. I'll take Njoku if he's there. If he goes this pick, then I'll take Elijah Moore. I'm going to go Njoku. I think there's more of a chance. Actually, everyone behind us has a tight end, but still. I really want to take Njoku because I'm fine taking Donovan Peoples-Jones and or Cedric Tillman. So I want to leave myself open to those possibilities. If I end up taking two wide receivers in the future to go with Watson, then I would rather have had Njoku than Elijah Moore. I'd rather have a tight end and 2 wide receivers than 3 wide receivers because the wide receivers might end up competing with each other more so than the tight end would for targets. So as far as Chargers go, I wasn't really thinking about the game stack with Austin Eckler, so we could have maybe taken Quentin Johnston. I think it was the pick we took Watson, but I think the way that this is playing out, I prefer. Jordan Love is a guy I end up with a lot because I love Christian Watson, so I also think Jaden Reed is one of the most undervalued players. We have a big QB team in front of us. This could be a spot to get our final running back. We definitely do not want Zach Charbonnet. Okay, I'm just going to take Elijah Moore then. Be glad they gave us both Moore and Njoku. It's pretty good for us. Like I said, the Jets are going to just be kind of rough. We could take a Benaconda as our 5th running back. There's Mecole Hardman. There's Conklin. I'd probably go 3 tight ends in this build would be ideal. So this draft, I have less of an exact plan for what I'm going to end up with as positional allocations than I usually do. Usually I know fairly early. I know I'm not drafting more than 5 running backs. That's for sure. I would like to draft 3 tight ends, but I think I would have to take a pretty darn good second tight end not to. I doubt most of those guys are left on the board. Dalton Schultz. I'd be fine rocking and joking and Schultz. Could use him to set up a Stroud stack in case I get kind of boned on my other stacks. What I could do is try and get Conklin and Logan Thomas in the last 2 rounds and try to get a Howell stack going. Washington plays San Francisco week 17, so probably wouldn't really have like anybody from San Francisco to go with them. Houston plays Tennessee, so like I often end up with Tyjae Spears because I'll be like playing for the Houston game stack, but I do that one quite a bit. I do like Marvin Mims quite a bit, so I might go with like the Russ, Judy, Marvin Mims, maybe a Dulcich, and then have Eckler on the other side of that game. As far as Raiders to go with Jonathan Taylor, Michael Mayer is an option. I like him quite a bit. There's not a whole bunch of Raiders players that I like, so they end up being kind of rough as far as the bringbacks and whatnot. We are going to do the Sam Howell thing, getting Elijah Mitchell would be pretty nice as like a bring back. But I have a feeling we're going to have to pick between Elijah Mitchell and Russ Wilson with our pick, which won't be fun. As far as wide receivers go, I like Rashee Rice and Hyatt quite a bit. Dubs to set up a possible double stack with Jordan Love would be all right. The upside of Rashee Rice compared to Romeo Dubs does not seem. Those two things do not seem equal. I think there's danger in trying to figure out what the people behind me will do. That's for sure. So one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to do Sam Howell and Russell Wilson, right? So we need to kind of decide this pick which we are going to do. Dulcich is a strong enough tight end that like we could take Dulcich and Njoku and be done at tight end. So the reason why I went with Wilson there over Elijah Mitchell is one, I don't take Wilson very much, so having a share is fine. Like I said, like I'm not totally against diversification. I'm not like completely against it. I just think if there's like a pick that you hate and it's like you think is bad, like Mac Jones, like it's fine to fade him. The chances are, like, if he is the guy you need that year, you just lose, right? Like, you're probably going to lose anyway. You're generally going to lose in this game. It's really hard to win. I have not liked the comments of Sean Payton about Greg Dulcich. That's for sure. Could take Roshan as an RB4. He might be a strong enough RB4 for us to stop at 4. Definitely only going 2 quarterbacks. Tight end is up in the air. So we have the option now of just sticking to 2 tight ends if we'd like. Still might try to sneak in Conklin late, but like it would be on a luxury pick. Like I'm okay with stopping at Njoku and Dulcich, but like I said, I would also be fine adding Conklin. So it gives us a little bit of play in our tight end slots. So we might end up picking between a tight end and a running back. Would be interested in Donovan Peoples-Jones on the way back. Marvin Mims is still on my radar, so I guess I could start to throw a few of these people into the queue. But say if you're like throwing people into your queue, just keep an eye on what these ADPs are, because all then you have to do is glance at the board real quick and be like, how much am I reaching for this correlation? So these are like our main game stack pieces right here. Guys in the Jets Browns game and the Denver Chargers game. There's Gerald Everett is another one. Then after that, we'll start to look at some minis if we like still have more players to pick. Running back is like fairly hideous. The nice thing, like if you are end up like say it's not like a disaster if we end up taking 1-0 week 5, one of our 2 running back slots, because like we're going to be winning the running back slot like very often throughout the season. Marvin Mims is a player I like way more than ADP, so like he's one I'm a little bit more willing to reach on than others. To me, I think Marvin Mims is like the second best wide receiver on the Broncos already, but he might have like the type of NFL career where it's not the greatest for like a dynasty type roster. So I could see him being pretty low volume, but obviously in best ball, like that can still work out for you in a way that it can't really in dynasty. So if we do get Donovan Peoples-Jones here, I probably will like not end up taking Tillman, because that'll give us 3 pass catchers with the Browns, 2 of which are wide receivers, so that'll probably be like enough for me. So I'll probably unclick Tillman if Peoples-Jones makes it to us here. So what's our next pick? 160. This would be a 12 spot reach on Mims. Really like Chuba Hubbard a lot. He's a player I would not mind getting more shares of. So we still could end up with a third tight end. I would much rather end up with Conklin than Gerald Everett. Like, I would rather have just one bring back player from that game than an extra bring back player from this game. Plus, Conklin's cheaper. Obviously, if Everett were to fall a whole nother round, I guess then that might change the equation. But I think I'm going to reach the 12 picks at ADP here on Martha Mims unless he goes before a pick. Like, I think he's pretty similar play to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Oh, that sucked. So now I'm really glad that I took Greg Dulcich. We could take Donta Foreman here. I'm like very highly invested in Roshan. I do also like Devin Singletary quite a bit. Let's do that. Devin Singletary is only behind one person. I think he's going to have the pass catching role with Pierce. I think it's going to be a little bit harder for Donta Foreman to pay off. So we did end up with Dulcich and Judy still to go with Russ. So I'm really happy I made that Dulcich pick. So if I wouldn't have made the Dulcich pick and then gotten sniped on Mims, I would definitely be very mad as opposed to slightly disappointed. I do think Devin Singletary is involved enough. So one of the reasons why I took him instead of Foreman is I think Foreman has more upside, but I wanted to take Singletary because I'm a little bit more comfortable going 4 with Singletary than I am with Foreman. There's a chance that Foreman just gets completely fixed out, isn't he just? Whereas Singletary, I don't think that that's in play. I think that he will, at minimum, be the pass catching back for the Texans. And if something happens to Pierce, this kind of wheels up for Singletary. We've seen him be very good in fantasy when given an opportunity. He just usually fumbles said opportunity away. So really not going to do the Tillman thing. If I had missed Peoples-Jones, I'd be fine adding him as a third pass catcher, but I just don't really want him as a fourth. I would like to kind of avoid any more week 5 buys. I'm already getting slaughtered on week 5 with Eckler and Walker and Watson and Joku, and so we got 3 wide receivers out. We got a tight end out. We got 2 running backs out and a quarterback. I think Rondell could be kind of interesting at the end of the year, especially when they're getting the taste slapped out of their head in week 17 by the Eagles. I could see Rondell, DeAndre Hopkins having been traded, and then Rondell catching 10 passes in that week 17 game as they lose by 1 million points. Don't like him as much as I like Jaden Reed, that's for sure. So probably taking one of Reed or Rondell here. I would consider Shaheed as well. Gonna take Reed here. So at minimum, I'm going to go one more wide receiver. I'd like to get Conklin, but certainly possible he's like gone before our last pick. With our two tight ends, we don't need to like reach on Conklin because we'd like to get Conklin, but like I said, we could stop at two tight ends if we really wanted to. So what's our next pick after that one? 201. It's rough. Would normally consider adding Jerome Ford when I have Watson, but I'm not going to add him. Like he would be a nice consideration as a fifth running back if we decided we wanted to go with a fifth, which we don't really need to. But like with him being by week 5, just I'll have other spots to do that. So if Rondell does go before our pick, so I am actually probably going to take Conklin because there's just not anybody on the board that I really want. Get our Jets correlation that way at our third tight end. I mean, we could still take Nicole as part of like that big game stack if he's there when we pick. But I prefer Conklin to Nicole. Nicole may have like very little role, but we've seen him be pretty good when he does get some touches. So we're definitely done at tight end. Is there like anything that interests us? Mechie does. Taiji does. Dell does. Zach Evans. Do we have like any Giants? I don't think so. Consider Benaconda as part of like a game stack. Dwayne McBride. We have the Packers kind of, no quarterback, but Packers mini with those two. We don't really. We still have 2 picks left, huh? One pick absolutely has to be wide receiver, I think. This group doesn't have like the top end to go with 7 wide receivers, that's for sure. So one pick is definitely going to be wide receiver. Then the other pick, we kind of take whatever we want. Could do a Tim Patrick. That's an interesting one. We whiffed on Marvin Mims, and I generally don't take Tim Patrick anymore because of how much I prefer Marvin Mims, but certainly a world where it's like Judy, Tim Patrick, and Marvin Mims, and Cortland Sutton ends up in a different destination. Or if somebody gets hurt, that he just comes up and plays well. In this case, we would want it to not be Jerry Judy getting hurt. So would we rather go for the 5th running back? Benaconda. I just think the 5th running back is just adding like very little to us. Like specifically, Breece Hall would have to be out before week 5 for him to matter at all for our bye week. So it seems weak. Well, hopefully the Denver play somebody bad on week 5. So we're going to need Denver to do some shit week 5. Denver and Green Bay. We're going to need strong week 5s from those teams to help us out a bit that week. So I'm on prioritizing Mecole and then Tim Patrick. I'm going to take Nathan Dell out because these two guys are pretty interesting. I guess Josh Palmer could get on there too. Yeah, he's another week 5 buy guy. Yeah. Oh, another one of those. He's like a pretty loose play anyway, so. So we ended up with a couple Jets for week 17 correlation with our Browns bet. And one Charger to go with our Broncos bet. Betting on the Broncos and the Browns. What can go wrong? A lot. But that's the way this draft played out. So I pretty much try to get an elite QB, and then if I don't get an elite QB, my fallbacks are kind of Watson, Richard. I mean, Watson might be an elite QB, but he's not priced that way. So, like, for the sake of this argument, my fallbacks are kind of Watson, Daniel Jones, and Anthony Richardson. And like, if you bring up guys like Tua and Kirk Cousins, like, yes, obviously I'm fine taking those guys. But like, I'm generally trying to pair a Tua or a Kirk Cousins with also having a Watson or an A Rich or a Daniel Jones. And if all of that fails, then you will see me occasionally go into the disgusting, despicable 3 QB bucket, where I'm often targeting guys like Howell, Ritter, Trey Lance. So let's take a look at this team. Watson and Russell Wilson. It doesn't enthuse me. I'll say that. But you know, Watson has a massive ceiling. Russell Wilson has a median ceiling. So it's not the worst pairing in the world, but it's just 2 players I don't really like care that much for. I mean, obviously Watson, like, not that long ago, like, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, but I mean, he was like a top QB. So we'll see what kind of bounce back he can have this year. Like, his price is like pretty good, I think, for the upside, but the upside might not be what it once was. So I would give this group like a B minus. Running back, I mean, basically have an A, but we have to stay healthy, right? We got Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker that can like get it done. And we have a complimentary pack in Devin Singletary, which I am kind of glad I took over Foreman. Foreman does have the higher upside, I believe, than Singletary, but Singletary has more of a role to begin with that I'm certain of, and he also does have a similar contingent upside, and his contingency might be a little easier because, like, even if one of the guys with Foreman goes down, Roshan or Herbert, like, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all of a sudden like super wheels up for Foreman. Whereas if Pierce goes down, you're pretty sure that Singletary is going to be awesome. So I would give this group like an A minus. Like, it's hard. Basically, like, this group would be one of these two having a different bye week away from being an A plus, but it's not like that's a big deal. Wide receiver, well, we have 9 of them. We don't have the super top end, but we have like a whole bunch of guys in these 4 that are kind of like real nice. Then we've got some dart throws who it's really hard to peg the upside on. Like Elijah Moore, no clue. Donovan Peoples-Jones seemed like his upside is neutered a bit by Cedric Tillman. So I'm just as fine taking Tillman as Peoples-Jones in this draft. The reason why I took Peoples-Jones at ADP, despite not really having a big lean on the bets, is just like it's harder to get this one, right? So like I can always get Tillman if I want him with Watson. Jaden Reed and Christian Watson, I believe that like helps our floor a bit because like if Watson, isn't quite the amazing guy that I think he can be, then Reed is probably better than this draft position. Hardman, like, he has the one game, multi-touchdown, weird upside, but like without injuries in the Jets, he could just be dead. He could be a dead body. Who knows? Tim Patrick also could be a dead body, but he correlates with our Russ Wilson, and I don't know, certainly possible that he's not a dead body. So I would give our wide receiver group like a B because of the depth. And, probably another B here at tight end. So, we have 3 guys, 2 of which are pretty good. One's like okay. So overall, I think this draft was just okay. I think this is kind of the price we paid for having this A group at Hyperfragile RB. So we got kind of like a B minus, an A, B, and a B. Overall, I've had better drafts that I liked more. I haven't done much Hyperfragile, but I think this one turned out all right. We got to discuss the Geno Smith paradox a little bit, and like I said, my guys down there are kind of like Howell and Ritter if I'm trying to find a Geno Smith this year, and after that, maybe gambling on Trey Lance, but that's tougher for me. And then I like Baker if I'm getting really dirty, and I like Baker even more than Mac Jones, who I just don't think has the weapons, and the weapons are certainly not priced in a way like the Geno Smith weapons were last year. So he is just not a play I'm getting to this year. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and good luck in your drafts, folks.